Hi, this is Sean Murphy of SK Murphy. I'll be the MC for this morning's briefing by Brendan Adams on the early sales process. Brendan is the founder of Kiinetics, a sales coaching and consulting agency who works with early stage startups and founders who want to excel at sales execution and customer success. His sales background includes extensive experience in both enterprise B2B and early stage startup sales. He has generated over $200 million in direct revenue over his career. He's got a new book coming out called Sales Launch, a sales framework for startup founders. And we're going to make a early copy available to attendees. If we've got your email, we'll send you an offer. We're also going to have a conversation in about 10 days if you want to take part, where he'll take feedback on what you learned to do some final fine tuning before he launches on Black Friday.
Yeah.
So, Brendan.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate the opportunity to chat about this, and also just to use this as a chance to get out and kind of do some beta testing on some aspects of the book. And I'll kind of just jump right in. And if people have questions as you go along, I can't see the chat, so just speak up or
So
what
type
have you.
them in, and I'll type them in, and I will relay
Yeah,
them to Brendan.
yeah, by all means, right. So, the way this got started, this conversation got the catalyst for this is I was talking to Sean about the fact that I was creating this new book, and the book is kind of a byproduct of some of the work that I've been doing in my sales coaching and sales consulting business. And so, just to cut right to the chase, that I'm going to talk about 5 specific things that I kind of teased out of the book for this conversation. And I think these are particularly important for anybody that's in a founder role or entrepreneur, or, you're a creator, solopreneur, what have you, or you've just got some idea that you want to promote out there in some way. And so these are the things, why it has to be you. And I wanted to sort of discourage you from building. Stop focusing on selling and work on discovery. And then talk about why customers don't buy, and then very quickly why they do. And just, as kind of a addition to uh, uh, Sean's very generous introduction about me, I will say this. First of all, I lead with, when I do sales presentations or talks with people, I try and keep this to be really short, and that because nobody really cares about me. They care about themselves, right? And so I want to make the talk about you and about the problem at hand and about the opportunity that goes on with it. But I will say one thing here, and that is I spent a lot of time working with early stage startups and accelerators. I ran an accelerator. I've done a lot of sales classes and work with and done some bunch of mentoring for some of the local groups here in the Baltimore metro area. And one of the patterns I see over and over again is people racing out and starting to build something, and they do it at the expense of investing in uh, what I would consider sales, and that is the early product discovery process. So everything that I'm going to talk about today is really informed on that common pattern that I see among anybody that's in that entrepreneurial space. They tend to race into the whole idea of building. And so one of the things I'm going to talk about are the 5 fundamentals that I see that oftentimes get neglected or underappreciated. And the first one is, if you're an early stage founder or an entrepreneur, you're in charge of sales, and it really has to be you. And a lot of people resist that. They think it's sleazy. They think being in sales is manipulative. They think it's something they can put off until later, or outsource to somebody else. And in the very early going, that's a bad strategy to adopt, or that's a bad mindset to adopt. And so one of the things I really talk about when I talk to early stage founders or anybody that wants to know more about sales, it's first and foremost is you got to get your mind in the right place. And some of the things you ought to know is that you're integral to the success of your company. And you're really integral to the whole idea of sales, because first of all, things. You're in a position to you've thought about this thing, this whatever your idea is, whatever your initiative might be, you know about it. You're living it. It's important to you, right? And so that gives you a certain amount of expertise. And at the same time, um, there are probably a number of things that you don't know early on, and that's important too, because those are things that you're going to need to know, and you're going to want to know those things firsthand. And that's unfortunately immersing yourself in a sales role. And then the third thing is if you're out there talking to customers early on or talking to prospects early on, you're in a kind of an enviable position, because you have the ability to make decisions. You can on the fly hear things and make decisions, as opposed to some salesperson or somebody in a company that has to go back to other folks and validate and see if it's okay. You can do that right on the fly, and that gives you a certain amount of authority and presence uh, and influence when you talk to people. Oh, you can have that reaction with someone where you say, "Oh, that's an excellent idea. I hadn't thought about that. I'll take that up, or I can build that, or I can change that. And I can include that sort of capability." And that does a couple things. It allows you to, on the fly, uh, refine your product. But perhaps more importantly than that is if you do that in front of a customer and then come back to that customer later on, that prospect later on, and say, "Hey, you told me this was important to you, and you expressed it in this way, and here's the functionality. What do you think of this?" And that can have a tremendous impact on an early stage adopter, someone that you may want to try and convert and make a customer. That the fact that they've been heard, and you've listened to them, and they helped influence the direction of the company and the product can be very meaningful. Now you have to make sure that you're doing that for the right reasons, and that particular feature or capability doesn't drive you down into some rat hole or dead end. But if you're going about it the right way, and you're thinking about these things, and you're getting this feedback, and you're in a position to make those sorts of decisions, that can make for really powerful early adopter, and an early adopter that can that can step up, and when you need to make the next sale and the next sale after that, or be a reference or provide a testimonial, they have good reason to invest in you. And the other reason is, I think, and I spend a lot of time with founders and kind of reinforcing this, and that is the fact that you're a founder or an entrepreneur. You inherently have some fundamental characteristics that put you in a very good position to be in front of the customers and sell and advance your idea. Invariably you've got curiosity, you've got creativity, you've kind of figured out a process, you've got some level of expertise, you've got this, like I say here, like a focus on making things better. At least let's hope so. You've got some level of vision in terms of where you want to take something, and I don't know if it's courage or craziness or lack of good sense, but you're going out on your own, and that really puts you in a very different world than the people that are sitting down, that have the comfort of sitting in a job and getting a paycheck, right? There's all sorts of opportunities to be disappointed and work extra long hours and have nothing and have it not pan out. And so anyone that is making the effort is very different from someone who sits on the sideline and watches. And these are all kind of attributes that you really should leverage. And when I talk to customers, or when I talk with founders, or anyone I'm coaching or mentoring, I want to make sure that they appreciate and understand how this is. It's an overused term, but these are superpowers that I think you really are going to need to draw on if you're going to move forward and be successful. And they are things that also make you someone worth listening to when you're talking to prospective customers. I said this earlier, and I need to say this over and over again. Don't build yet, right? If you're in the very early stages, hold off building until you've had customers, until you've had conversations. And I mean lots of conversations. And I need to say this over and over again because when you start to build before you know what your customers want, you oftentimes end up engineering yourself into a problem that you can't easily get out of. And what that often causes is this, the setbacks that are damaging to your motivation and your momentum. And if you're an early stage startup founder, you need all the motivation and all the momentum that you can get. So, you know, yes, there's some really good tools out there that you can AI with AI now, and there's Figma and all this sort of stuff that you can now that can generate code and so forth. But I would really encourage you not to build until you really know what it is you're supposed to be building, and the people that are telling you what to build are lining up and saying, I can't live without this, and here's money to do it. I want to be one of the first people that gets your thing, whatever it happens to be. So instead, I would argue that you want to mock stuff up, and you want to, and I mean, it can be paper and pen, it can be PowerPoint screenshots, it can be Figma if you are so inclined, but it can be ugly, and I would argue that it shouldn't be perfect. It should have flaws in it, and the reason for that is when you talk to someone and you let them know that it's ugly, and you let them know that it's not going to hurt your feelings if they say something, then what people are encouraged to do is tell you exactly what they think. And that's really, really important for you. You do not want them to tell you that you like it if they don't. You don't want them to tell you, oh, this is great. You want them to to point out where it's wrong or why it won't work. And then you want to dive into what that is. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about discovery. But the reason why it's good to have some level of flaw is that if you have flaws in it and people feel like they can point out that there's a flaw, it loosens them up to, because when you acknowledge, oh yeah, that's wrong. Yeah, I shouldn't do that. Well, maybe we should do it. How should we do it? Now you're getting feedback and you're getting the kind of information that you need to get. And when you do that, you can find out who else needs to see it. You can find out what departments inside an organization would be influenced by it or impacted by it. And you can ask questions like, and I'm getting into discovery now, but you can find out why someone wouldn't want to buy it, right? Or where's the resistance going to come from this new thing that you're coming up with. So you really want to be in what I would call market research mode. And that is really nothing more than lots and lots of conversations, right? And again, this is probably obvious, but you want to start doing that right away, right? As soon as you have the idea. And kind of a corollary to this, there's a fair amount of paranoia. And that is that, oh, I've got this fantastic idea and I better not share it until I build it because um, uh, someone else will steal it. And I have a really good story about this. I don't know if you know who Jeff Bezos is, but I I was going to do mail order book sales years before Jeff Bezos did. And I remember Crown Books being around and thinking, why do I have to spend $29 for a hardcover book? And I had a business when I was a kid where I sold belt buckles, orthopedic logo belt buckles via the mail order. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to sell books via mail order. And you know what? I didn't do it. And damn it. So, which good for you. Now you get you're fortunate enough to have the chance for me chatting about this rather than me starting my own rocket company. So, again, my point here is don't worry about someone stealing your idea. Nobody's going to steal your idea. Or if they are, it wasn't your idea in the first place. So I can't. The next thing I would say, the third thing in this press is more important than anything, and that is don't worry about selling. Worry about discovery. Worry about figuring out as much as you can and be as curious as you can and figure out what it is you don't know. And you got to figure out what assumptions do you have that are correct and what assumptions that you have that are not correct. And what pain are you addressing? How big is that pain? How acute is it? And why will they buy? What are the specific reasons they'll buy, and the reasons why they won't buy? And I guess at this moment, I'll take a quick pause before I dive into discovery more and say, for those of you that are on the call now, are you in this? Can you share a little bit about where you are in terms of the discovery process? Have you started? Are you putting it off? How many conversations with prospective customers have you had? Anyone?
So Cole, you want to go? I know you're kind of in the middle of this process now. You want to kind of share a little bit where you are and what's going on?
Sure, sure. So I did the discoveries. This is my first real foray into this. I started about a year, almost 2 years ago. So I did kind of start with the discovery process. I think I got that relatively okay. I just started having conversations with people, and so by the time I talked to like 20 plus people, I felt like I had a pretty solid idea of where I could start moving. Um, but yeah, it was definitely surprising just because the idea changed so much, even over just 20 people. It's just like learning things like I had no idea what people dealt with. For context, my products for graphic designers, for agencies and freelancers, and I'm not a graphic designer, so obviously there's a lot I had to learn there, but I'm 100% on board with the discovery first idea. I feel like it's created a much more organic product than me just saying like I think this is what I should make and then making it.
Were you able to go back to the people that you did discovery with, that you had these conversations with, and did they ultimately any of them convert into being customers?
Well, I've just barely begun to sell, so actually I still need to do that, and definitely not all of them. Like I've kept up communication with people, or I've tried to, and some people have fallen off the train, but I do think there are still some people who are excited about it, who are enthusiastic when I've talked to them, and I think there's definitely some potential for prospects there.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Anyone else?
Anyone
All
else
right.
going
So
through discovery want to share progress? Okay, we'll move on. Sorry.
sure. So my advice for how to do this, for how to do discovery is I would first of all, I would make a long list of questions. And there's later on, I think there's a graphic of a discovery set of discovery worksheets that I think are kind of useful. To kind of prompt your discovery process. And I don't think it's a bad idea to have that list in front of you when you're talking to someone sometimes. Now, you can't do it all the time. You're at a cocktail party or some event and you get to talk to someone, you may not be able to do that, obviously, but going through the process of figuring out what it is you want to know is really, really helpful. Um, uh, and then be prepared. I think I have a slide on this later on, but be prepared. Do the homework. Don't be afraid to look stupid. One of the things I find is there's something I'm very good at telegraphing the fact that I can be an idiot, and then it doesn't bother me. And what happens when I do that is it disarms people. Number one, and that is they don't feel uh, reticent to talk because I'm smart. This guy's letting me be smart, and it feels good to be smart. And so I'm going to tell him what he should know. Number one, and that's a very useful technique. You know, the kind of Columbo, for those of you who are old enough to know that television program. The other thing related to that is, as you get comfortable with the idea of not knowing stuff, you'll find that you learn more and more, and it becomes the point where it really happens less. That you start to get to the point where you just don't get surprised anymore. You start to learn, like, you can almost finish someone's sentences. Don't do that, right? But you can know where they're going to go. And so the key then is to continue to look for those moments where you're surprised or where you're missing something and so forth. But you're going to find that after 10 or 20 or 50 conversations, you're going to get the point where you say, oh, I see something common here. Here's the pattern. Here's the commonality. These are the features. This is the kind of the functionality. This is whatever. This is the niche that I should be in, whatever. And and so what you're doing is you're really not selling at all, right? You're really just trying to understand what the environment you're in, the landscape and so forth. And you're looking for that fit for whatever it is you're coming up with. And that thing can be a product, it can be a service. If you're going into a particular, you want to start a consulting agency, or you want to do this, the practice is the same. It doesn't really make any difference what it is you're trying to accomplish. What you're doing is trying to figure out exactly what it is you are ultimately going to be delivering out to that customer base. So to get good at it, at that process is invaluable, and it's an invaluable skill. And it's really, the important thing is you want to be curious, and you want to be genuinely interested in what the other person has to say. Now, what that means is you ask a question and then you pause, you let them talk, and so that curiosity is important, but just as important is the fact that you're stopping and you're giving them the space to answer a question and elaborate on it. And if you find something that's particularly interesting and they say something about it, it may be just as simple as saying, like, oh, really, that's fascinating. I didn't know that. Can you tell me more? And that's enough to get you to go. That's oftentimes enough for you to get better at getting a more fully fleshed out answer. Context is key, of course. You want to be asking questions within the context of that conversation. You do not want to waste people's time, right? You want to make it, so in the course of a discovery, if it's on a phone call and if it's not extemporaneous kind of a conversation, but it's scheduled, you try and get a lot of stuff done in 15 or 30 minutes. There's no reason to ask for, you're going to have much better time asking for 15 minutes. Hey, I'm just trying to find out a few little things. Can I get 10 or 15 minutes of your time? Right. And, don't pick their brain, but instead say, hey, I'm trying to do this thing. And you seem to have a lot of background expertise in this area. Could I ask a few questions of you? And, 10, 15 minutes is all I want, or whatever, something like that. Don't waste their time. Make it easy on them. So don't make them fill out a questionnaire. Don't make them be able to have a conversation with you, right? And so it just, whatever it takes to make it easy. Questions should be open-ended. Which is to say, don't ask them a question that answers yes or no, because then you don't get, first of all, it's not a fun conversation because it's very boom, 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 right? You want to ask open-ended questions that you get them to explain things and get their context and their experience, and maybe even an anecdote or whatever, and costs. What does it cost? You're looking for clarification. You're looking for understanding. You're looking for advice. People love to get advice. Look at me. That's what I'm doing here, right? And that discovery process may take longer than you think. Don't rush it. Don't make it feel like it should be rushed. Make it feel like, hey, you're just curious. And those sorts of things invite better answers. I took this slide. I did a presentation last night to a bunch of startup kids at a community college that are competing for money. And I took this slide out of that conversation, which was that one was to talk to investors. And I just thought it made a lot of sense, even though you're not talking to investors. So this is just a series of questions. And by the way, if you want these slides, Sean can get them to you, or I can get them to you. But these are some of the questions you're going to want to need answers to. Who are your customers, and how do you engage them, and how will they succeed with your product, right? How will it feel to them when they're successful using whatever it is that you've cooked up and that they've bought from you? How are they doing whatever they're doing now? And who will buy? Why won't they buy? We'll talk a little bit of that in a minute. These sorts of things are kind of important things to ask yourself, and they're more important things to be asking the people that you're talking to. One of the other questions that I think you should be asking is, hey, who else should I talk to? So when you talk to someone and they give you a bunch of good answers, they seem to know it. Geez, you really know this space. Is there somebody else I should talk to? And see if they'll tell you, because you really want to daisy chain this. And then when you do, when they say, oh yeah, Joe or whomever, and then when you tell Joe, oh, so-and-so told me to talk to you. And then after you talk to Joe, send a note back to the other guy or gal and say, hey, thank you for that. That was really helpful. And he told me much of the same thing, or he also mentioned this, boom, boom. So they feel like the advice that they gave you was used, and that makes them feel good. And people that feel good tend to buy from you. Do the prep work, right? So this is a discovery questions that I crafted up. So these are kind of worksheets that you can use. If you want, email me and I'll send them to you. And then of course, make them custom to yourself. Make a list, learn your industry. Like if you're talking to people in the graphic arts space, right? Know that space. Try to be curious about it. See what's going on. See what kind of they're up against. Graphic artists, how do they contend with Fiverr and Upwork and that sort of crap. Know your prospect. Spend a minute and go on LinkedIn or Google them and just see if they say stuff and press releases or whatever. And then show up. I tell people all the time, 90% of success is showing up on time and doing what you say you're going to do, right? There aren't enough people to do that sort of stuff. And so if you just show up, and then the rest of that is follow up. Like, so, hey, you had a conversation with them, make a note to yourself, send them a note a week later. Hey, that was really great, or really appreciate it. And by the way, but whatever. And if you have a follow-up question, you may be able to get it answered. So I think this is another thing. And Sean, should I take a pause and breathe, or am I good? Everyone's asleep. Did everyone go to sleep?
I had a question.
Oh yeah, fire away.
You're talking about discovery, which is what I do as a profession. I'm a user researcher. Do you have any advice, as I'm starting to think about owning my own business, to get companies to outsource this kind of research to me?
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, that's a yes and no, right? So, yes, because a lot of people aren't very good at it, and because they just, no matter how hard they try, they can't. They want to get to an answer that they may not want to. They want to get to an answer, and they're afraid that they get the wrong answer, right? So they kind of predetermine their outcome, and that's dangerous, right? But so yeah, I would think that and by the way, there are a whole bunch of those kind of companies around that they do focus groups, right? Where they rally a bunch of people in a room and say, hey, what do you think of this cereal, or what do you think of this television show? And they do kind of behind the mirror sort of stuff. So there's that sort of thing out there. But there are two ways to do this, and I'm sort of doing this a little bit, but you would certainly do it. And that is, you could teach them how to do it. You could say, hey, you need to do this sort of thing, and hire me to teach your team how to do this. Here's the methodology. Here are the kinds of questions, and you could architect the specific questions for that group, or you could outsource it in a lot of cases. If it's something that they're going into a new niche, right, or a new market, and they don't know much about it, you might be exactly the right person to do that. At the same time, if you're really good in a particular market, they're effectively, and they're hiring you as a consultant. One of the things about buying a consultant is they're trying to shortcut that outcome, right? They're trying to hire somebody who already knows it, so we don't have to go through the whole discovery process. Now, there aren't, in a lot of cases, it's not nearly as efficient, or it's not nearly as effective to talk to one consultant as is to crowdsource, so to speak, by talking to a whole bunch of end user buyers. But yeah, I would think you could certainly do that. I don't know if does that answer your question?
Yeah, I took away some ideas. Thank you. Like, I could teach the team the methodologies.
Yeah.
If I'm a specialist in a certain industry or a niche, then I could be seen as a subject matter expert.
Yeah.
Or if they're exploring a new niche or market.
Yeah. And the other thing is, you know what? You could certainly do some market research on that. Like you could go out and talk to a bunch of companies or a bunch of people. And I guess the first question you ask yourself, to go back to this one, is, who are your customers? So it does help you to have a niche, just so you can be a little more focused, right? So you don't want to be in retail and oil and gas and whatever, right? You want to, ideally you pick a niche where you're really strong, and then you talk to a bunch of companies and say, how do you do your market research? How do you figure out what to do next? And then you might ask them, would you hire me to do it for you? And here's why. Right. And you could do some market research. You could do some discovery on that very thing. I don't know if that helps.
You mean discovery about my discovery, like discovery
Yeah.
about my discovery business. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could, that wouldn't even be that hard to do. It just takes some time.
So there's a group called the QRCA, which is Qualitative Research Association, of a whole bunch of guys that do research. There's several other groups like that do market research that you might check out if that's your profession. Are you a member of any of those?
I've been looking, so I'll check it out. Thank you.
I put that in the chat.
I think so one of the things that I in this new book, and I don't know why, I don't know if this doesn't show up often enough or not, but I wanted to simplify why customers don't buy. Because I think when you go through the discovery process, these are all kind of related, but there are a number of reasons why customers don't buy. And this is almost in order of, I don't know if this is necessarily in order of likelihood, but the first one is there's no need, or there's no perceived need. So this is important for you to figure out early on, because if you've got a solution to something that isn't a problem, you want to discover that before you do a whole bunch of building, right? You don't want to spend a lot of time creating things, and then coding, and then finding out that it's not an issue. One of the people I consulted with went off and built an application for barbers, and he went off and did it, and started building an app and spending a bunch of money. And then he went to try and sell it to barbers, and they didn't need it because of the way the barbers, how they're hired and who runs the shop and that sort of thing. And it's cost him a lot of money, and because he thought there was a need, and the people that were doing the work said, that's not a problem. Here's why. So you want to make sure that there's a real need, and that sometimes in your discovery process, you can uncover a need that they didn't know they had, but oftentimes there's no need, or the pain isn't that great. Another related reason people don't buy is because they don't understand what it is you're selling. And that's that's a huge problem for a lot of people, in the sense that they are talking about something and the customer doesn't understand how it fits into their business. And this is, again, why it's so important to understand, do the discovery process. So you really understand, and you're speaking in terms that are that resonate with your audience. You understand the nomenclature of the industry. You understand the very specific problems that they're faced with, and the kind of the dynamic of how they do business and who their competitors are and that sort of thing. So those sorts of things, if you really understand those, you can help to communicate your solution when it's time to get to that point where you're actually in the mode of explaining how you might be able to solve a problem. You're addressing something in a way that's not confusing, so that resonates, and so it matters. The third one, and this is a big one, this is especially big one if you're dealing with big ticket items, and that is risk. And that is, what's the likelihood that this is going to succeed? Am I going to look stupid if I pick this guy or this person and it fails? What's the likelihood it's going to fail? Like, what's the likelihood I'm going to spend a bunch of money and I'm not going to get anything? It's going to take too long. And sometimes the risk is financial. Oftentimes it's status. It's lost time. Those sorts of things. So you really want to understand what their risk is, and are you able to address that risk and make them comfortable that the risk is small or negligible or non-existent because of whatever reason. And I can go into that ad nauseum about some of the things you can do to kind of address that. But risk is a big one, especially as the price of things goes up. Inertia and status quo, they're fine. This is kind of related to perceived need. They're fine. It's a big hassle. They know it's a problem, but they can live with it, right? And in a lot of cases, you'll see that, right? And so you see this a lot with SaaS applications, where someone builds a SaaS tool and they make it free to start. And the reason they make it free to start, for 14 days or a month, is because they want you to start adopting it. You got to change your behavior. So a big part of what sales is behavior change. And this is especially true for inertia and status quo. You're trying to get someone to do something different. That's really what sales is getting someone to do something different. And so in order to do that, you have to eliminate that feeling of inertia. You got to get them willing to do something different. Effort is kind of related to that. It's the other side of that same coin. How much effort do they have to put in to get this thing going? Is it do it yourself? Is it do it for you? Can they, how much do they have to change the way they're doing things in order for them to get the value and get the gain that you're promising them? And then finally, and this is, I think, is really less important than most people let on, and that is the money and the cost. And that is, if you can address these other things, the ones above this, then the money oftentimes takes care of itself. If you can eliminate the risk and they can see where the gain is, that if I do this, my life gets easier. If I do this, my status goes up. If I do this, I save this amount of money, or I make this amount of money. Then spending money is not that big a deal. They'll do it. And ultimately you get to the point where you're talking to someone and you can say, listen, you're going to spend $10 and you're going to get 100. Why wouldn't you do this? Right. And if that's the kind of ROI and there's no risk, why wouldn't you do it? That's the kind of conversation you end up having with them if you understand the circumstances well enough. And cost and money just generally are not that big of an issue. So why do they buy? And this is where I kind of wrap up, and this is very quick. And that is because you've done the other four things, right? You understand their situation. You understand your own mindset. You've done the discovery, so you really understand who they are. And so you recognize there's a fit. You recognize what the gain is, the return on investment for them, or the status that they gain, or the time they can claw back. And then most importantly, you've done these other things. And what you really have done is you've established a level of trust. You've established you've kind of made it understood that you're not doing this because you're trying to sell them something, but instead you're trying to solve a problem. And it so happens that, hey, I can solve this problem for you, and you know I can. And that's really what all this is about. And so this is why I kind of harp on discovery so much. And that is that that if you go about discovery the right way, with that level of curiosity, with that willingness to prove that to not know things, that you're in a learning mode, and that they're an expert, and that they can teach you stuff, that all establishes trust, right? And if you can say at the end of it, hey, I can't fix this for you, that's not what I'm working on. I really appreciate the conversation. Thank you very much. That's not, I'll keep you posted if you want, but I can't sell you anything. Boy, if you have those sorts of conversations with people, that word gets around. And so when you do talk to someone, say, I can fix this for you, you're saying it from a position of a real authority, and people love that. So they buy because they have a problem, it's worth solving, and they believe you can solve it. So that's why people buy. And it's also because you understand the reasons that they don't buy. So with that,
so I think Doug Goldie's got a question.
Yeah, fire away.
Okay, so this is very similar. And now that I realize I mentioned Stephen Blank, actually the stuff I'm more familiar with was like 2 authors past him, like Ash Mazura. And
yeah, okay.
This is and so the one difference is that they're looking, everything else is very similar, pretty much the same. But what they say at the end is we're looking for a marketing channel. And again, this I think is geared towards software apps, where we're gonna do a SaaS app. And what we want a marketing channel for is so that we can drive the customers, whatever cohort it is, to our learning page.
Right.
And our landing page, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so, but you have it at the end, you're just like individually selling. That's the only difference.
Yeah. Well, here's the reason for that for me is I think you got to get sales before you here's what those guys, they all want to do is they want to get to marketing. They want to get to, I'm going to buy Google ads, and I'm going to buy a bunch of Google ads, and I'm going to drive people to a page, and it's going to answer all their questions, and then they're going to buy, and it's math. It's like, it's top of the funnel sort of stuff. And there's a point in time where that makes a ton of sense, right? But like before that, and for a lot of people, and especially in a B2B world, I don't think that works. I mean, you can do that at some point, right? But I think there's something incredibly motivating about talking to someone, and they say, "Oh, I want this," and they give you their credit card, or they write a check. And and for the first 10 or 20, it's not, it's what's the Paul Graham thing, do things that don't scale.
Right.
In the beginning, you want to get the point where you've sold this 5 and 10 and 20 or 30 times. And the other thing is, for a lot of people, they're not doing things at mass, or they're not doing things at mass for a long period of time. They're doing things like I sold stuff over and over again where we sold it once or twice or 3 times, and it'd be $1 million or $5 million. And you only have to do that once, right? And you only have to do that. Like, so is it Cole's graphic arts company? I don't know.
Cole's helping agencies.
Right. So depending upon the pricing model that he's got, right, $1,000 a month, whatever, he may only need 10 of those sales, right, to make it.
And I'm talking about cheaper things than that generally for SaaS app.
Yeah.
But the other point that I think where you need to sell it first maybe is, and one feedback I got from a sales guy was that you really need to go after early adopters. This is
Yes.
kind of an early adoption thing. So I think
Yeah.
probably with early adopters, is there any other differentiator you would have for early adopters other than closing them personally?
Well, I think the psychology of them is different. This goes back to Jeffrey Moore, right? And Crossing the Chasm. And
Oh,
that is
wow.
the right. I mean, right. That is the psychology of many of those people is different. And that is they're not afraid of risk. They want to
Right.
be first mover, or they want to, they need a competitive advantage, or they're just their mindset is such that they
I
like things
forget
that are on the
what he said, but what percentage of a market is early adopters?
any like if you're the if
1%?
you're
Is
well
it
Less than 2%.
less
yeah,
than
but
10? Yeah.
right, but it's 100% if you're a founder, right? If
You
you're
got, yeah,
if you're starting out and and I've got this new idea and you're the first two or three people I sell, those
right.
are early adopters. They are taking risk, right? And they're buying you based on your credibility and your vision and your stick to itiveness. And so, yeah, you want to get to the point where you can sell 20 or 50 or 100 of these a month. Yeah, you definitely want to get there. But the people, what I find a lot of early stage founders think they can do is they can, I'm going to build this thing and I'm going to put up a landing page and it's going to sell itself. And
Well, that's only going to be for people in drastic pain, right? I mean, and
yeah,
not cost very much, so the risk is low.
I guess it depends on the dollar amount of the
Yeah,
problem.
I mean, well, you mentioned it. People have to be in pain, and I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And when you want to sell for 100 or $200, that's, they're going to start thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, if it's not for a widget. I mean, although I think a lot of the same things apply. If the discovery still applies. Maybe if it's a 10 or 20 or $30 item, you still want to have a lot of conversations with people. But then, yeah, you're probably right. You probably want to just go out and sell and sell on a landing page until Walmart becomes aware of you.
So Brennan, let me offer
Sure.
one example. It's an old example. PG&E's bleach pen, right? So people were doing tie-dye stuff and they realized they could develop a pen that cost $5 or whatever that will allow you to draw on t-shirts and essentially get a different effect, right?
Yeah.
That's a low-cost product. They still did a ton of discovery and user research to figure that out.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so it's not necessarily the case that low-cost products go immediately to some kind of hammering a channel with ads. If you look at PG&E and companies that introduce a lot of consumer products, they do a lot of research before they do that.
Well, yeah, but that's Procter and Gamble. That's not anyone on this call.
No, but my point is there's a company at scale that if they chose to could buy ads and they realize that the higher path of success is to actually follow the process that you're advocating, even though the product is low cost.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Right. Yeah. And yeah, of course. But they're throwing a lot of money. They're also throwing a lot of money at it. Even at that early stage, I would think.
Yeah, they're building fake kitchens and fake laundry
Yeah.
rooms and yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Other
I'm
questions?
not,
You go ahead.
yeah. I was going to say, I'm not really, I mean, I know Stephen Blank and he's, I don't know Ash, but I mean, I know Stephen Blank and I'm basically I'm talking about this because that's been my personal experience in the kind of world I'm at. And these are the sorts of things that, that I see over and over again. So some of this, yeah, a lot of this stuff is the same as what he's talking about. I do think of it from I think from an individual sales standpoint. And what I'm trying to do is get non-sales people to understand they can sell. And I think what Steve Blank is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think he's trying to get people to get non marketing people that are like engineers to understand marketing.
Yeah. So did you want to talk a little bit about the book and you've got one or two slides left?
Oh yeah, let me see if I can get back to that. Yeah, just am I still sharing?
You're
not?
sharing a picture of yourself.
Okay, let me get back
There
to
we are.
this. Oh, you're seeing it now. Okay.
Yep.
So
Questions, discussions.
yeah, so here's the thing. So I've got this book, and kind of a related philosophical perspective that I have is that people don't have time to read books anymore, and so it's a very condensed book on how on for early stage like early stage founders, and a lot of it's the sort of stuff I talk about today, but other things as well. And I'm launching it on Black Friday. It's a so if you're so inclined, I'd be happy to share the PDF version with you early. I think we're planning on doing like a session. Sean, is that right?
Yeah,
Where we go through
we've
it?
got emails from folks that register. We're going to send you out an offer. If you raise your hand, you can get a copy of the PDF, and we'll also invite you to a special session with Brendan just to say, hey, I've read the book. I had these questions. I had this feedback, just as a way to kind of extend the conversation. And you're
Yeah,
welcome to keep the PDF, and it's going to be $1 on Black Friday, and then it'll go up from there at some point.
yeah, and it's just and it's and this is again my way of doing discovery and doing product innovation on the fly. So if you'd like to, and by now I think you probably figured out that I can take criticism, and I look forward to it. So if there's specific things you if you want to read it and provide feedback and then provide a review, all that would be appreciated. And if you don't, that's okay too. And then to contact me, it's brendan@kiinetics.com, or you can reach me at Twitter, not better at LinkedIn. And I still like calling it Twitter. Yeah, and I'm happy to connect with you, or if you have questions, or what have you. All right. And so thanks. I appreciate the time and your attendance and your interest. It's good. And I wish you
I have
luck.
another question
Sure, fire away.
Go ahead.
for Sean and for you. And this
Yeah.
is related to the fellow who asked about, who's a researcher.
Dane, yes.
And so I've been trying to find a marketing / sales guy to join me in my startup to get out of the building, right? And I've noticed a lot of them have, they have like a consulting business, so it's hard for them to come on board full time. And that might be something for him to do. And I don't know if that would be a good idea for the startup. That's, I guess, my question for you guys. Would it make sense to bring somebody like that in to do customer development?
Is that for Sean? You want to tackle that? Or you want me to?
Once you go ahead.
So I sure. So
I'll go second.
Is a researcher enough?
Yeah. So if you want to double your time, if it's someone who I would strongly recommend that if you're going to go out and do kind of that market research discovery, and you're bringing this person along, you want to bring them along for some period of time so you and that person kind of figure out exactly what it is you're trying to discover, so that you can, if you're going to try and
exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So as long as you kind of like figure out the methodology and figure out exactly what sort of questions and get on the same page, so that when that person comes back to you and says, hey, here's what I learned on these 7 calls, those things they're meaningful in the sense that he or she is thinking about in the same way that you are. Kind of relate. Go ahead. Sorry, Doug. What were you going to say?
Absolutely.
So one of the related things that I do a little bit of, and I'd like to do more of, is salespeople are expensive. So if you're a founder,
that's my point. My point is, in startups, you don't have a lot of cash.
Right.
But just to pay somebody like he's talking about, that would be prohibitively expensive. So you bringing them on as a partner, as part of the team, then you're paying them basically in equity.
So
of course,
this is one of the things that I do. So, and that is I think that there are a lot of there's a real opportunity for early stage startups. Where the founder starts to get some traction, And then now they think, I don't have enough time to do this all the time. I need a salesperson. But they can't afford an expensive salesperson because it's 200K. You know, you don't know what you're going to get. They're oftentimes fussy, or they're comfortable where they are. They want the system, they want care, they want the CRM in place and all that other stuff. But if you could get someone just out of college, or someone that's been through high school and has a work ethic, I have a tendency towards athletes because they're used to a fair amount of people yelling at them and pressure and all that sort of stuff, right? And they, you know, they have to live through setbacks. I had a conversation with someone. What other environment for young people exists like that? I don't know. The military would be another good one. So you get someone like that. They're relatively inexpensive. They got a good work ethic. And then what I do is I work with the founder and then coach them. And so they get up to speed rather quickly. And then you get a good employee relatively inexpensively. It's a growth opportunity for them. You know, you get them for a while, and then they either move up through the ranks and they become the manager and so forth. And you can weave in a CRM, and that's so I do that with early stage startups, because at some point the founder can't do sales anymore. Right.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And
So go ahead.
no, go ahead.
So I would make it, we're kind of mixing a couple different roles. So
Yep, exactly.
if you were to hire somebody like Brendan to do some preparation for the call, agreeing what's going to happen, do the ride along and do the debrief, you might find that if the call is 20 minutes and you've got plus or minus 30 minutes set up, 30 minutes tear down, he's going to see more in that cycle than if you hire somebody who's just out of college and hasn't done interviews. So, and you don't necessarily need somebody like that full time in the company. If you're only going to do 20 interviews, you need order of magnitude 20 to 40 hours of work.
Yep.
So
I'm envisioning lots of customer development.
So what if you learned a ton in 20 interviews? Because there's two problems. There's figuring out, do you have product market fit? And then there's figuring out your go to market. And it's two different problems. But you're trying to see, am I in the right church, wrong pew, or now can I start to execute, right? Because if you're in the wrong church, you got to change methods. You got to shift. And I think that's what he's outlining here is, am I working on the right thing? Before you start writing code, do I feel some induction from the market? Do I feel a connection, a pull?
Exactly.
So he's put his email in there. I would suggest you reach out to him and have a longer conversation. Any final questions for Brendan, or we're going to break it up? Thank you all for coming.
Hey.
Brendan, thanks very much for a great talk.
Thank you.
And we will contact you if we've got your email to send the PDF and the slides.
You're very good. Thanks, folks. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye.